About the biggest stories that matter to you the most. Breaking news, John Calipari is finalizing a 5-year deal to become the Arkansas Razorbacks' next head coach, covering college sports like no one else. The biggest guests in sports. We now welcome in Hall of Famer Jim Calhoun.
Such a pride I had, I came to Connecticut.
The legend, Tim Tebow joins us.
We'll run it back. I like it.
The legend, Herschel Walker. Welcome in, everybody. I'd say a little Sunday night edition, but this ain't going to be a little episode of anything. But it is the Aaron Torres pod. I am your host, Aaron Torres. Hope everybody's doing well. Hope everybody's having a great day. I'll tell you what, this was about as good of a weekend and as good of a Sunday of basketball that I can remember. Buckle your chin straps. We're about to probably have about a 6-hour show tonight. I'm going to try to remember everything on this rundown. We are going to open St. John's, Kansas Thriller. St. John's off to the Sweet 16. Bill Self, what is his future after another early tournament loss? We'll talk a little bit about what is definitely the shocker of the day. Todd Golden, Florida Gators falling to Iowa, the first #1 seed out of this tournament. We'll talk my UConn Huskies. I thought that was about as good of a performance as we have seen from them outside of that St. John's game a few weeks ago. That was the best we've seen from UConn in a while. We'll talk a little bit about a team that did not play well, Kentucky. It is a crucial offseason ahead for Mark Pope. And oh, by the way, we'll wrap with a little bit of Saturday stuff, including Darius Acuff doing Darius Acuff things. But let me even start by saying I appreciate everybody tuning in. It is 11:36 Eastern time. 15 of the 16 Sweet 16 teams are set. We are not quite finished with Alabama, Texas Tech yet, but it is 11:36 Eastern time, and I didn't want to keep anybody else waiting any longer. If you're not subscribed to the Aaron Torres Pod and Aaron Torres Pod YouTube channel, make sure to do so. We're closing in on 72,000 subscribers. And I think most importantly, turn on those notifications because we're going to be going live whenever there is news. By the way, we had 3 separate updates on North Carolina over the weekend, so make sure to turn on those notifications. I think we will have I'll just say this. I don't think Hubert Davis will be the coach by about midday on Monday, so we will react to that. Make sure you turn on those notifications. If you're listening on Apple and Spotify, make sure to download the podcast there as well. And if you are watching or listening there, leave a 5-star rating and review. Also, before we get started, we are down to 16 teams, essentially. Alabama looks like they're going to hold on here against Texas Tech. You're going to need tickets for the Sweet 16 and Elite 8, or maybe your team's eliminated. You need tickets for something else. Well, guess what? That's what SeatGeek is for. It is America's #1 ticketing app. Over 28 million downloads. They are the official ticketing partner of the Aaron Torres Pod. And what I love about SeatGeek more than anything, they take care of listeners of the Aaron Torres Pod. Okay, so first of all, if you go to SeatGeek.com or the SeatGeek app, if you use promo code Torres, that is promo code TORRES, you will get, how about this, $20 off your first purchase. The SeatGeek app, promo code Torres, gets you $20 off your first purchase. Should mention, by the way, great thing about the app, every ticket on the app is rated 1 through 10, green dot or red dot. You know right away if the ticket is a good one or maybe something to reconsider. And should mention as well, that SeatGeek promo code Torres, it gets you $20 off any ticket on the app. So if your team's eliminated, you're not going to the Sweet 16, you could still use SeatGeek promo code Torres to go to concerts, shows, baseball is coming up, all that good stuff. SeatGeek app, promo code Torres, $20 off your first purchase. With that said, goodness gracious, it is a busy day. Busy time in the world of sports. There is no more time to waste. So, folks, let's get to it. Let's get to the topic of the day. Topic of the day, I'll be honest, I think there's about 4 or 5 different games we could have led the show with. But I think going into the weekend, the most anticipated potential matchup that we could have had is exactly what we got late Sunday afternoon in San Diego, California. Okay, you know it's the game of the day. When CBS has it as the final game in the lead into 60 minutes on the East Coast, that is the one they want you to be locked in on. And we certainly got an interesting result in San Diego. St. John's with the 67-65 victory. The St. John's Red Storm are going to the Sweet 16 for the first time since 1999. How about that? The first time this century. Congrats to Red Storm fans. We'll get to the dramatic ending in a second, but listen, where this starts is very simple. I thought it was a very quintessential Rick Pitino game. St. John's, I thought early on especially, it was so obvious that Kansas, and listen, we're going to talk about Bill Self. I understand it's tumultuous times in Lawrence right now, but Rick Pitino and St. John's, they established themselves early, the physicality early, the defensive toughness early, jump out to about a 16-8, I think it was, lead early in the game. Then let's be honest, it kind of turned into a rock fight. Nobody could make shots. Kansas themselves was a top 20 defense this season. And so I bring it up because it's this back and forth and what's going to happen and who's going to win. You come out of the second half. St. John's takes a 14-point lead in the second half. Complete domination. Okay, I thought it was interesting. Stan Van Gundy said during the broadcast, he said, we watched Kansas's shoot around yesterday. All of the things that Kansas emphasized in that shoot around, they are not able to do any of them right now. So St. John's in complete control, but it gets late. Kansas starts making shots. Flory Badunga makes a few shots. Darren Peterson makes a few shots. And then we get this crazy end of game where it is tied at 65 apiece. I think if you're watching this, you probably saw how it ended, but Kansas with 4 fouls to give. So they give 1, stop the clock. Give 2, stop the clock. Give the 3rd, stop the clock. Give the 4th, stop the clock. And on the final play, St. John's has but 4.9 seconds left to do anything, or we're headed to overtime in San Diego. The ball is inbounded to Dylan Darling. We certainly cannot play the video here. YouTube, if you're watching, we are not playing any video. But here is how it sounded on CBS.
This is going to be Darling. He's got to go. Darling puts it up. Oh! St. John's is going to the Sweet 16.
So Dylan Darling, how about this from Dylan Darling? He finishes the game with 2 points on 1 of 5 shooting from the field. The Kansas defense on the final play was an abomination. We're going to talk about that in the Kansas section, but it does not matter to St. John's fans. Congrats to St. John's. Headed to your first Sweet 16 since 1999, as I mentioned. What I loved about this was after the game, Dylan Darling he's not at the podium, but he's on the court, okay? And listen, I think this was a theme of this weekend. Tough old school coaches, Dan Hurley versus Mick Cronin, Tom Izzo going to an elite or to a Sweet 16 once again, and Rick Pitino just the same. No cutting corners, no excuses. Nobody gets his teams better from November to March than Rick Pitino. Thought it was funny. They asked Dylan Darling after the game about what did Coach Pitino say to you during the timeout? Now, before we get to the sound, Matt, it's funny because Pitino went to the podium and said Dylan Darling called his own number. This was Dylan Darling's version of what was a back and forth between him and Pitino in the huddle.
Did you will yourself there?
I don't know, to be honest. I don't know. 4 seconds left. Didn't have time for much. Called somebody to send me a screen, and I went to the rim.
What did your coach say to you in that final timeout?
Yelling at me. Yelling at me per usual.
Yelling at me per usual. That was Dylan Darling on the shot that will make him a March icon and a St. John's icon again for the 3rd time. St. John's going to its first Sweet 16 since 1999. First of all, great call by Matt. If you are a St. John's fan, if you're new to this show, we have a specific Twitter page just for St. John's fans. Torres on SJU. We have an intern named Drew who is one of one in terms of covering St. John's. I think it's the best St. John's page on the internet. Make sure to follow Torres on St. John's. All right, let's get to the big picture and listen. let me say this. It wasn't a perfect game, but let me say this. So it wasn't a perfect game from St. John's. 36% from the field, 31% from the three-point line, 6 of 11 from three. There is a lot to clean up, but I would say two things. One, listen, the Kansas season did not end how anybody wanted. Kansas is a darn good team, and especially on the defensive end. It was never going to be easy. It was never going to be a blowout. It was never going to be pretty unless something went catastrophically wrong for Kansas. So it wasn't perfect, but what it also showed was this. When you got Rick Pitino on the sideline, you got a chance. And I keep going back to what I have been saying about Rick Pitino since the day he was hired. It's funny. At some point, we'll pull the sound from the day he was hired. I was singing Frank Sinatra on air, but I said, this is the guy St. John's needed. This is the perfect spot at the perfect time in his career. And a program, listen, I think it is going to go down as one of the great hires in the history. Whatever happens from here, I don't know if there's going to be a national championship. I don't know if there's going to be a Final Four. But what I do know is this. Rick Pitino took over a program that was done, that was irrelevant, that had nothing. I'm not trying to be mean, St. John's fans. I know you had made an NCAA tournament here or there. But what he has done, I think it's going to go down as one of the great hires in recent memory. Okay, so we know about the accolades, right? We know about the stats. We know about the numbers. But it is worth noting. St. John's, they had, I should just pull up the stats here. Listen, I've been doing a lot of prep, so forgive me. I don't have every stat in front of me. But let's go to the old St. John's Wikipedia page, okay? So, Rick Pitino, year 3. As I've said now 3 times for a 4th time. First Sweet 16 since 1999, okay? How about this? They had not won a conference tournament championship since 2000. So it had been a quarter century since they had won the conference tournament, the Big East tournament. They have now won it in back-to-back years. Oh, by the way, how about the fact that they had not won the Big East regular season title since 1992, if Wikipedia is correct? And oh, by the way, they have now won it back-to-back. So we are talking about 2 back-to-back conference regular season titles, 2 back-to-back conference tournament titles, a Sweet 16 for the first time since 1999, and it just all goes back to one man in Rick Pitino. I'll say this. I'm just going to say it. I don't know what's going to happen from here, but he has now led how many teams to the NCAA tournament, how many teams to the second weekend, how many teams to a national championship, 2. And so I just look at this guy. Listen, he is not going to go down as the greatest winner in the history of college basketball. He is not going to go down as the greatest, he's not going to have John Wooden's championships. He's not going to have Coach K's longevity, but his ability to do this every single place he goes remains one of the most incredible things that I have ever seen. By the way, Final Four at Providence. By the way, I mentioned Kentucky. I mentioned Louisville. Iona goes there, immediate success, multiple NCAA tournaments, and now here at St. John's. And what's crazy about Rick Pitino, listen, it's about St. John's. It's about an incredible team, an incredible moment, incredible history, all of that. And I don't want to take away from Zuby Ejiofor, the Big East Player of the Year. I don't want to take away from Bryce Hopkins, who played maybe his best game, or at least the best one that I've seen in a St. John's uniform. The fact that Dylan Darling, his only basket of the game was a big one. The fact that Dylan Mitchell, I think, and Stan Van Gundy said on the broadcast, he's going to be an NBA player. But it comes back to Rick Pitino for me. And I was thinking about this, and I tweeted this, because when I say this is one of the greatest hires we've ever seen, I get a lot of pushback of, he's a Hall of Famer. What did you expect? And it's like, okay, I get that. But at the same time, what I consistently say is this. From the time Louisville fired Rick Pitino, and we understand why they had to in that moment, until the time he got hired at St. John's, there were quite literally dozens of coaching jobs that opened up at the power conference level. Okay, I remember doing segments on Boston College, on UNLV, which isn't even a power conference school, all these schools. And listen, Pitino wasn't going to be the right fit at everywhere, and there were places he wouldn't have gone, and there were places that weren't going to hire him. But I truly believe that he could have done this at any single school that wanted to take the chance and hire him. As a matter of fact, Matt, you could pop up my tweet from earlier in the day, because I said exactly this. I said from the time he was fired at Louisville until he was hired at St. John's, Dozens of power conference jobs opened. Any of those schools could have hired Pitino. I believe with the right NIL support, he could have done this pretty much anywhere. Pick an ACC school, pick a Big East school, pick a Big Ten school. I believe he could have done it anywhere. Credit to, first of all, Iona for making the initial hire, and then St. John's for pulling the trigger. I go back to when that hire was made, the DMs I was getting, are we really going to do this? Brian Shanley, the president of the school, Father Brian Shanley, was he actually going to make the move? And he did. And what it shows, listen, in life, sometimes you got to take risks. And it was risky to hire Rick Pitino. And it's why a lot of schools never considered it. And it's why a lot of schools would have never done it. But St. John's did. And for the final time, they are headed to the Sweet 16. A lot of work to do before they face Duke on Friday night in D.C. But I'll tell you what, man, you got to be fired up if you are a St. John's fan. By the way, St. John's fans, if you need tickets, SeatGeek app, promo code Tours will get you $20 off to those tickets in Washington, D.C. And Matt is one step ahead of me. If you need that Big Rick Energy t-shirt, order it tonight. It will be to you by Friday. You can rock it at the, do they call it the MCI Center? I don't know what they're really calling it these days. Whatever the arena is down there in beautiful Washington, D.C. I don't even know if it's beautiful anymore. But go to Washington, D.C., wear the t-shirt. Big Rick Energy tee. You can get it right there. Scan the QR code if you're watching online. If not, Aaron Torres, online.com/shop. All right. Let's switch gears to the other side of St. John's, Kansas. St. John's, Kansas is a final in San Diego. St. John's wins at the buzzer 67-65. And we just talked, for people who are going to watch this later, only see a clip. If you're a St. John's fan, we just talked about the St. John's perspective on this game. But what do they say? The thrill of victory, the agony of defeat. And there is no doubt that there is plenty of agony at Kansas, as they are on the wrong side of a buzzer beater. They are on the wrong side from March Madness to March Sadness. The Dylan Darling buzzer beater not only ends their season, but I do think that over the next few days, there will be legitimate conversations, and there already are legitimate conversations about if Bill Self will be back, if he should be back. I think it's time to have that conversation. I am not forcing him out. I love him. I've enjoyed watching him coach, and if he wants to stay, he has every right to do so. Okay. So first of all, as far as this game is concerned, listen, I'm not going to do like this is not the day to just tear down Kansas. They were a defensive stop away from forcing overtime and potentially getting to the Sweet 16, okay? But wasn't this game also sort of a metaphor for the entire season? And listen, again, I fully understand that St. John's is an elite defensive team, that nothing was going to be easy, and that part of the reason that Kansas is not in the Sweet 16 is because St. John's is a legitimately awesome team with a legitimately awesome coach, okay? I get all that. I don't want to dismiss it. What I would also say, weird game. Darren Peterson's great early. Slow, late. There's not very much going on. The offense doesn't really click. Again, Melvin Council's kind of the guy later on in the game. And I just bring it up because there was never any consistency. And that was a metaphor, in my opinion, for the entire season. And it's not just my opinion. It's just like a fact. It's just indisputable that we had a situation at Kansas where, again, and we talked about it all year, it was 27 different seasons in one. Darren Peterson is playing. Darren Peterson is not playing. He's playing early. Melvin Council's taking over late. And I just bring it up because there was just never any consistency, any continuity to this entire team. Really, I don't want to say all season long, because middle of Big 12 play, I thought they hit their stride. Obviously had that incredible win over Arizona on Big Monday. And I don't want to sit here and say that it was never good or that it was just a disaster of a season. But I also think it's indisputable that down the stretch, this team was not very good. Starting with essentially, I would argue, that Cincinnati game. You lose to Cincinnati on that Saturday. It was never really the same after that. You get swept by the Arizona schools. You get blown out by Houston. You nearly blow the lead against Cal Baptist, by the way, on Friday night, and you end up losing this game. And so I bring it up because it was bad. The ending, by the way, in my opinion, a metaphor again for the season. A little bit disjointed, a little bit confused. Now, I actually thought they executed the foul situation fine. there were people that were like, they left too much time on the clock. It's like, you can't just let, I thought they handled that part fine, because at the end of the day, if you let them get too much momentum, if you let them drive, if you let them catch the ball and go, eventually they're going to be able to get a shot up and you're going to foul a shooter. So I thought with all those fouls to give, they handled it well, but then the end was just a train wreck. Okay. We don't have to replay the sound. We can't play the video, but at the end of the day, Dylan Darling catches the ball with 4.9 seconds left. He's either got to go straight to the basket, or he doesn't have time to do a lot with the ball with that much time left on the clock. As a matter of fact, we saw it in the Florida game. You just don't have that much time, to do too much. And so the fact that they let him get right to the rim, I understand you don't want to foul, but you let him get to the rim. There's no help, whatever, and he hits the buzzer beater, and your season's over. And so with it, I think it just shows it was a weird season. It was a disjointed season. And I do think big picture, there are just going to be conversations about Bill Self here over the next few days. First off, 2 different Bill Self press clips. The first one was kind of asked about the season, and even he admitted like it was weird, it was disjointed. Matt, you can go ahead and play Bill Self after the game.
Frustrating years would be probably too much to say, but it's certainly a year that didn't seem like it was. Nothing about it was very smooth. It seemed like to me we were having to adjust on the fly quite a bit.
He just said what we've talked about all year. I don't blame him. I thought he actually did a good coaching job, having to, in his own words, adjust on the fly all year long. But it doesn't change the fact that this is, listen, it is, I'm not a Kansas historian, but I think it's fair to say essentially the most disappointing run of his time at Kansas, okay? And so we're going to get into some of the actually, let me get into the details first, Matt. We'll get to the second clip in a second. But for me, because I think people are going to sit here and say, Torres, you're crazy. Bill Self, he's a Hall of Famer. He's awesome. He's this, he's that, okay? The stat to know, this is the 4th straight year. So Kansas won the title in 2022. 2023, round 2 exit. Now, admittedly, that was a season in which he had major, he had a very serious medical condition right before the tournament. He didn't coach in the tournament. You lose to Arkansas in the round of 32. 2024, you lose to Gonzaga in round 2. That was the year he famously said, I started working on next year weeks ago. Then there was last year, you lose to Arkansas again in the opening round. And then this year, you lose to St. John's. So that is 4 straight years that you have lost in the opening weekend of the tournament. And I think part of it, listen, you run into good teams. St. John's is good. Arkansas was good last year. They made the Sweet 16. But the counter to it is when you're a 4 seed, you're going to play good teams in the round of 32. When you're a 7 seed like last year, you're going to inevitably play good teams. And so part of it is the regular seasons haven't matched up to previous expectations, which means you're now putting yourself in position where it's that much more challenging once the postseason starts. And so with it, Bill Self in his mid-60s, multiple health scares. He was asked essentially about his future after the game. Matt, you can go ahead and play that sound as well.
Gone through on and off the court. How much time will you take to reflect upon what is next on this stage of your career?
Well, I haven't really gone through much on the court. I've gone through some stuff off the court. So I'll get back and get with family and visit and see what's going on. I love what I do. I need to be able to do it where I'm feeling good and healthy to do it, fairly well. So I'll get back home and it'll all be discussed.
There's Bill Self after the game. I'm going to get home and it will all be discussed. So what is next for Bill Self? What is next for Kansas? Let me start, because a lot of Kansas fans think I don't like their team. It couldn't be the furthest thing from the truth. I actually love Bill Self, have a great deal of respect for him. What I would say is this. I hope he stays. I love watching his teams. I think, and I said this throughout the season, I think you can argue from about early to mid-January till about early to mid-February, he did some of his best coaching. Again, win at Texas Tech. You beat Arizona at home. You beat Iowa State at home. You had a great deal of success, that incredible atmosphere for the BYU game early on in Big 12 play, okay? But the counter to that is that it did not end well. And like I said, a 4 straight season without a trip to the second weekend of the NCAA tournament. And so I don't know what he's going to do. And I could actually, this is one of the weird ones. I could see it going both ways. Okay. On the should Bill Self return? Well, he's going to have a real good team next year, right? I mean, listen, obviously, I think it goes without saying Darren Peterson will not be back. I think it's time for everybody to just move on. It is what it is. I'm not here to criticize anybody. I'm glad Darren Peterson over the last couple weeks told his side of the story, but it does feel like it is time for everyone to move on. Obviously, beyond that, Melvin Council Jr., who has become an icon kind of in that program in 1 year, he will be gone. Trey White will be gone. And so there will be change. But Bryson Tiller will be back. I thought he was one of the most surprising players in all of college basketball when he was really rolling, had that great first half against Arizona. He was unbelievable. Flory Badunga, to me, I think is the interesting one. He's kind of mocked as like a late first-round pick. Listen, in the NIL portal era, you don't have to rush to the NBA. Does he decide to come back? And if he does, I think he could be one of the best players in college basketball. In the backcourt, you're obviously going to have Taylon Kinney, the 5-star that's coming in. Jamari McDowell will be back. So there's actually a lot of pieces. And then the major X factor is, do you get Tyron Stokes? We're not doing a Tyron Stokes segment at 12:01 Eastern time here on March 22nd. But I think it's fair to say that despite all the buzz, you are the favorite to land the number 1 high school player in America. And you add Tyron Stokes, you add Taylon Kinney to this roster that you're going to bring back. You're going to have a really talented team again. I think the counter to it, though, is 2 things. Is one, first of all, Bill Self will never not have a talented team on paper in March and April after a season. And so he's going to keep recruiting well. He's going to keep bringing in players. He's going to keep being able to get players that he wants out of the portal. And so I just bring it up because there's never going to be a moment where Bill Self doesn't have a really good roster. And at some point, he will have to step away from a really talented team, whether it's this year, next year, 5 years from now, whatever. I think the other thing, and I'll be curious if there's ever an official announcement one way or the other. Actually, frankly, I'll just be curious. Does Bill Self even make an announcement? Like, if he's coming back, is there an announcement, or is it just business as usual, getting ready for the portal, Tyron Stokes, etc.? That I do not know. But what I will say, I've been doing this long enough to know that there has been, over the last couple years, a theme with all of these guys who retire, is that all of them say some version of the same thing. I felt like I wanted to keep coaching as long as I felt like I could give my best, and I was giving my best to the team, and I was the best version of myself. And when I felt like I couldn't anymore, that's when I knew it was time to step away. That was some version of what Nick Saban said. There was some version of what Jay Wright said, of what Roy Williams said, of what Coach K said. And I do think Bill Self is going to reflect over these next couple of days on, like, am I still giving the best version of myself to this university and to this program? So I have no strong opinions. If there's Kansas fans in the chat, we'll get to you in a minute. If there's Kansas fans watching this after the fact, drop your comments, because I'm actually curious. Is this something that you want? But then I think there's the whole other conversation of, one, North Carolina, I expect to be looking for a new head coach here in the next 24 hours. Maybe by the time you listen to this, they will be in the midst of a coaching search. And then 2, beyond that, I think it's also worth noting that, who are you going to go get? And is it going to be an internal hire? And is that going to be what excites the fan base? Will it be Jacques Vaughn? That's probably the answer. And I just think it's an interesting time. So I have no strong opinions on what Bill Self should do. I think he has earned the right to decide what he should do. But I think it is fair to question. I think it's fair to question, did we see Bill Self's last game at Kansas on Sunday? Selfishly, I actually hope it wasn't. But if it was, we'll obviously discuss it in that moment in time. But I don't think it's 0% based on his comments and based on how his teams have performed in the tournament the last few years. It is 12:03 Eastern time, folks. We are just getting started. We got to talk about Florida. We got to talk about those UConn Huskies. Going to get somber face. We got to talk about the Kentucky Wildcats. What a debacle we saw on Sunday afternoon. And we got to go back to Saturday. Darius Acuff, Arkansas, High Point, a lot of stuff from Saturday. We're just getting started. Quick break. Be right back. All right, we're going to get back to the show in a minute. But before we do, you know what we got to do. We got to thank our friends. We got to thank our partners. We got to go ahead and thank Cauley Puffs and CauleyPuffs.com. Yeah, you see the logo on the back of the screen right here. Okay, so I've told you all about Cauley Puffs, but family-owned company, not far from where I live. Joey, a huge sports fan. And one day he was sitting on the couch and he said, you know what? I need a snack that is both healthy but delicious, something my kids are going to love, something my family's going to love, something I'm going to love. And so he came up with Cauli Puffs. This is the new age health food snack. You don't need to go to the grocery aisle and buy all that crap, the Doritos, the Fritos. No, my friends, you need Cauli Puffs. Baked, not fried, avocado oil, no grease, healthy ingredients. But here's the best part. They taste freaking delicious. Actually, there's another best part. In addition to tasting delicious, in addition to being healthy, they are also taking care of listeners of the Aaron Torres pod. Okay, so check this out. All you got to do is go to CauliPuffs.com. That's CauliPuffs.com, CauliPuffs.com, and you can get 15% off any purchase with the promo code Torres. That's Torres, Torres. It's that simple. 15% off any purchase, 1 bag to try them out, 100 bags to cater a party. Doesn't really matter. Promo code Torres. CauliPuffs.com gets you 15% off. Cauli Puffs also available on Amazon. You obviously can't get the promo code there, but CauliPuffs.com, CauliPuffs.com, promo code Torres gets you 15% off any purchase. Thank you to our friends at Cauli Puffs. All right, everybody. I'm back. Good to be back. Good to be back. First of all, congrats to our friends at Cauli Puffs. They have a big announcement coming later this week. We will share with you. CauliPuffs.com, promo code Torres gets you 15% off any purchase. Matt, really quick before we get to Florida, Iowa, any questions in the chat? Let's see here. Jose says, I think Self has kept Kansas relevant in this era. However, seems like they have plateaued. I think it's a great point. I think that's absolutely right. Now, I will say this, and I got pushback for even suggesting this. I think part of it is just the Big 12 has gotten tougher. I mean, Arizona, I know they didn't look great on Sunday, but they are an elite program that is not going anywhere. Houston is an elite program that's not going anywhere. Listen, BYU is not what we thought it was going to be, but another tournament team every year. Cincinnati, I think, is going to be coming, and I'm not saying like Cincinnati's some juggernaut, but I just think the Big 12 got tougher. But I think the word Jose used, I believe, is 100% correct, that it has plateaued. 4 straight NCAA tournament first rounds. I mean, I don't think there's any debate about it. So, yes, I believe they have plateaued. We'll see what happens with Bill Self. Matt, 1 or 2 more, and then we'll get to the rest of the games. Am I wrong to assume this is Pitino's first time playing Duke in the tournament since you know when? I know when. Do I dare say it? 92, Christian Laettner. Where's nobody when I need him? He says, I still hate Christian Laettner every time I bring it up. I do think Pitino, I felt like there was a year Louisville played Duke, but maybe that was the year Louisville played Kentucky in the Sweet 16. It's a great question. I will tell you what, KY Yelovich, cover your eyes and ears. They are going to play that, you know what, 5,000 times, which is amazing because clearly none of the players were born when that even happened. But yeah, I think it's fair. I don't know. I really feel like he coached against Kentucky, or he coached against Duke at least once or twice at Louisville. Remember, Louisville wasn't in the ACC for virtually his entire time there. They were in the Big East and in the American, so it wouldn't have been an inter-ACC matchup. Maybe one more, and then we will get to prices insane for DC at the moment. Hopefully they will come down. Well, that's why you need SeatGeek.com, promo code Torres, which gets you $20 off your first purchase. Yeah, I mean, listen, Duke, UConn, St. John's, Michigan State. I can imagine that is a pricey ticket. What a regional that will be. We're going to have all week to preview all this stuff. I am so excited. We're going to get some great games. Arkansas, Arizona will obviously be the headliner out west on Thursday. By the way, has anyone noticed the South region is basically the Big Ten tournament part 2? Houston versus Illinois. That's obviously one Big Ten team. And then Iowa versus Nebraska in the other Sweet 16 game. So let's switch gears because, listen, let me say this, okay? Let's talk Iowa and Florida. And let me say this. Big part of the, the Thursday, Friday conversation is there's never any upsets anymore. I hate it. I'm so sad. I don't see 15 seeds losing. Here's the thing. we are not getting upsets on Thursday and Friday as much anymore. And it's for all the reasons that you think. It's because of, the portal and NIL and this and that. Okay. But we get much better games starting in the second round on. And think about just what we saw on Sunday. Tennessee, Virginia, which we probably won't even have time to talk about. UConn, UCLA was very entertaining for a while. Purdue, Miami was entertaining for a while. So many good games, all competitive, a lot of really good teams. But I will tell you this, there was only one result from the weekend that truly stunned me. It was Iowa, Florida, final score in Tampa. It was in Tampa, people, 73-72. The Iowa Hawkeyes with the absolute stunner in this game. Let's go ahead and talk about it. Let me start by saying this. I always try to be fair and honest with you guys as an audience. And what I will say is this. I kind of had this on the third screen. I wasn't really paying attention. I was looking at the score, but it's Florida. They were unbeatable for a 2-month stretch, for a 6, 7, 8 week stretch. And I just kept kind of pushing it aside, and they'll figure it out, and they'll be fine, and they'll be good, and they're going to whatever. And it was just this weird game because even when they took the lead, they could never extend it. They could never blow it out. They could never, it was Florida would take a 4-point lead. Iowa would come back. Florida would take a 3-point lead. Then Iowa's got a 1-point lead. Florida would take a 6. There was just never a moment where Florida, it felt like they were totally in control. And then, of course, late, they get up 2, and you're thinking, okay, one stop, Florida goes to the Sweet 16. This is all just a distant memory. Instead, the ball is inbounded to Bennett Sturts. He finds Alvaro Folgares. Matt, if we have the sound, go ahead and play it.
And here we go. 8.9 to play. Sturts with the catch. Sturts bounce pass to the corner. Folgares for 3. Oh! Oh! 9 to play.
Florida's got no timeouts.
Iowa takes the lead by 1. And a timeout called.
No, I think the officials are checking the clock.
Stunner. Now, Florida did have 4.9 seconds left. Xavier Lee drives the length of the court. He gets under the basket. He tries to pass it. It does not matter. Iowa gets the win. Okay, so first of all, as far as the second to last play, the Iowa play, 2 things. One, immediately when Bennett Sturts caught it on the run, I was like, oh, this is not good. Because, listen, you don't want to let the guy catch it with momentum when they obviously, they were trailing by 2 at that point, remember. So you don't want to let him catch it with momentum. And I'm thinking he's just going to go to the basket. Then he drives, draws the defender in, and he kicks it out to Folgares. And in my head, I'm like, well, he's got to drive the basket. He's 7 feet. He'll get right to the rim. And he lines up for the 3. And my first reaction was no. But he looked so confident that I was like, I actually think that's going to go in. Sure enough, it does. And of course, listen, Florida, as I said, got one more play. But Iowa, listen, with due respect to High Point, Wisconsin, this to me was unquestionably the biggest stunner of the tournament. And a couple takeaways. This isn't one we're going to spend 15 minutes on unless you guys want to, unless you guys have comments in the chat. By the way, thank you to all of you that are joining us well after midnight Eastern tonight. But as far as this game is concerned, listen, I just thought it was the quintessential Ben McCollum game. Okay, so if you don't know about Ben McCollum, first of all, I should even go back. Okay, so the final play, this I thought was very interesting. Todd Golden actually said after the game, we couldn't find the sound. We were running late. We had to put a show on. We're down on storage. We don't have enough storage to store all these videos. But I thought it was interesting. Todd Golden actually acknowledged the plan was to actually foul Bennett Sturts. And I thought that was very interesting. For people who don't know, they were up 2. So you'd say he would never foul him. Why would he intentionally foul him? Todd Golden is famous. He used to do this at San Francisco all the time. Basically, the analytics basically tell you that even if a guy's a really good free throw shooter, that if you put him on the line in that situation, there was about 13, 14 seconds left when he got the ball, that if you put him on the foul line, there's a chance that he misses it. But even if he ties it, you get one more possession. And what you don't want to do is have the exact situation that happened with Folgares hitting the shot. So I thought it was interesting. I don't have all the details, but I think like I said, I think what he said was once Sturts got free, they couldn't foul because then he's on the run. He's a great free throw shooter, whatever. But I just bring it up by the way, I should mention, we basically have a final at Alabama. Alabama destroying Texas Tech. Christian Anderson just got pulled, so they're waving the white flag. Alabama will advance to the Sweet 16. So let's get back to the game. And again, I think once Bennett Sturtz caught it on the run, you can't then foul him because he's such a good foul shooter, whatever. But this game, two things stand out. The first thing, let's go ahead and give so much credit to the Iowa Hawkeyes. Okay, like I said, a Ben McCollum type game. For those of you who don't remember the backstory or don't watch Iowa, it's okay. First of all, Ben McCollum was the guy. He was at that Northwest Missouri for years, won multiple D2 national championships, then goes to Drake last year, immediately goes to the NCAA tournament in year one, beats Missouri in round one. They end up losing, takes the Iowa job, and he's got him in the Sweet 16 like St. John's for the first time since 1999. But I thought what was interesting was they kind of dictated terms of this game, which is crazy because no one has really made Florida do that in a long time. I think even the Vandy game, it was up and down, and Vandy was just better, and they got such a big lead that it became a blowout in a hurry. But at the same time, this was a game, I know the final score was 73-72, but there weren't a ton of possessions. I thought it was interesting. Florida actually took 5 fewer field goal attempts than Iowa. Iowa had the same number of rebounds, which is not something that I would have expected coming in with that Florida front line. And Iowa dictated terms. Iowa won the game. Iowa deserved to win the game. So first off, there is the credit, no doubt about it, to the Iowa Hawkeyes. But there's also, I'll say this for Todd Golden. I think, look, Todd Golden is 40. He's going to be coaching a long time. I think this is one that if you interview him when he's 70 or 80 or 85 and he's in a rocking chair somewhere, this is one that is going to sting and is going to bother him because, listen, he's really good at what he does. I actually am so impressed by him, his ability to evaluate, to get the right pieces. I know, Boogie Flan and Xavier Lee came out of the portal, but to counter that, found Alex Condon, found Tommy Hawk as, sub 175 recruits. Like they weren't even in the top 150 of their recruiting class. Found Ruben Chinyelu, as a 5-5 guy at the university or Washington State University. And he developed all those guys into the best front line, maybe in college basketball. Certainly Arizona, certainly Michigan have an argument as well. But I just think that this is one that is going to sting because I truly believe he had a team that was good enough to compete for and maybe win a national championship. And now you go into an offseason, and I think there's a fair number of questions about that team. One, Tommy Hawk, I assume, is going pro. I just think it's done. He's going to be a lottery pick. He should go pro. He's a third-year guy, helped him win a national championship. Okay. Then on top of it, Alex Condon, I think, has a tough decision to make. He almost declared last year, decided to come back, averaged 15 and 7.5 after his third year. I think there's a pretty good chance he declares. Chinyelu was so dominant. He's another one. Like I could see all three of them going pro. So you may have to replace essentially your entire front line. I know Micah Hanlockton, I'll be curious. He kind of burned his red shirt last year. I would assume he's out of eligibility. So you got major work to do in the portal. And that's assuming that you're happy with the guys that you currently have on the roster at the guard spots with Xavier Lee and Boogie Flan. So I don't have a lot prepared for this. I just think it is one of those games that you are going to sit there and in 3, 4, 5, 10, 15 years, you're going to be able to remember vivid details of because you had the game won, you were in position, meltdown late. And I think more than just you had the game won, you had a team that was good enough to win a national championship. I truly believe it, but we'll never know because Florida is eliminated. Iowa to the Sweet 16 where they will play Nebraska, a team they just played a few weeks ago in the final week of the regular season. Really quickly, one more other positive result. Let's go ahead and talk UConn, UCLA. Another one I have no notes planned for. It went final roughly 10 seconds before we went live on air here, but shout out to the UConn Huskies who get the victory over UCLA. Listen, I'm not going to crap on Mick Cronin. I'm not going to crap on whoever. But it was a lot closer than the 73-57 victory would indicate. UCLA played their butt off. They were out without Tyler Bilodeau, but UConn finds a win, and UConn advances to the Sweet 16, baby. All right, so let's go ahead and break this down. And before we do, listen, there is a little bit of a mea culpa that your boy Torres has to acknowledge. I am someone, I've had people that listen to this show say, Torres, you have been, I don't think I've been negative about UConn. I think I've been realistic about UConn. And I have said repeatedly, it has been a very frustrating season for the Huskies. We don't have to relitigate all of it because guess what? UConn's going to the Sweet 16. There's only 16 teams left. By the way, the Alabama-Texas Tech game did just go final, so Alabama is the 16th and final team advancing to next weekend. But listen, I have been critical of UConn because here's the thing, right, is that as a fan, and it could be a fan of your favorite Major League Baseball team, of your favorite NBA team, of your favorite college football team. It's not just college basketball. Whoever your favorite team is, and whoever any team you follow is, it's not about do you win every game, do you lose every game, what's the final score? But do you what it comes down to is, do you feel like you are getting the best version of that team? And do you believe that when the season is over, you can look yourself in the eye? And I'm saying you as a fan, but also the team as a team. Or can you look yourself in the eye and say that we got everything we could have out of this team? And I would say going into Sunday, everything was trending towards the answer being no. Even on Friday night, listen, we didn't do a show on Friday night. I know so many of you were out doing stuff. But listen, Terrace Reed saved their bacon. By the way, let's spend half a second. Shout out Terrace Reed, 31-27, quite literally one of the greatest NCAA tournament performances that we've ever seen. But it was funny because I had a buddy who didn't watch the game. He's like, wow, your boy was stat padding the other night. I'm like, he wasn't stat padding. Are you kidding me? They needed every single one of those points certainly every single one of those rebounds, including those 3 late offensive rebounds to get the victory. And so even on that night, Terrace Reed has this incredible game, but you can't really enjoy it because that game came down to the wire as well, and you just got an abomination of a performance from everyone across the board not named Terrace Reed. You finished that game 5 of 25 from 3. I believe it was 13 straight in the first half that you missed. And so going into Sunday, you're sitting there saying we're never going to see the best version of this team. Well, Sunday, it was, in my opinion, listen, it's hard to say that it's a better performance than the St. John's game a few weeks ago in Hartford, but even that game, and I'm not trying to dismiss one of the greatest, most dominant wins in UConn history, but that St. John's game a few weeks ago, it was clear, about 6, 7, 8 minutes in, UConn had it going. St. John's did not. I don't want to say, I'm not trying to undersell what UConn did, but I do think, to me, this game in some ways was more impressive because it wasn't just about playing down to an inferior opponent. UCLA was playing great coming into this game. I'm not going to criticize Mick Cronin. I think he did a great job with that team down the backstretch of the year, okay? But what Sunday was about was everybody stepping up. It wasn't the historic game from Terrace Reed. It was actually quite the opposite. It was everybody else playing the best version of themselves. Alex Caravan, listen, there's been peaks, there's been valleys, there's been good, there's been bad. He's been pretty good this year, very good this year, as a matter of fact, all things considered. Career high, picked a great time to have a career high 27 points in this game. He was awesome, and he hit big shots when they needed big shots, a couple threes early, the logo 3, middle of the second half, that was really like one of the stamps of oh crap, this might be our night. Braylon Mullins. I've been somewhat critical on the show. I won't tell you about some of the text threads that I've been in because I've said some not nice things about Braylon Mullins. Played one of his best games as a UConn Husky. 17 points, 5 of 9 from the field, 2 of 6 from 3. You could tell how excited Dan Hurley was for this player. And then the guy that I believe deserves so much credit, Jaden Ross. Listen, it's been about a 6, 7, 8 games where you could just see his confidence growing every single game, every single moment, every single whatever. He has turned into a great defensive player on one end of the court. And then I think on top of it, he was an offensive threat on Sunday night, finishing with 11 points, including 2 threes. I mean, listen, if you're not a UConn fan, I'm not trying to like I'm a UConn fan, so I understand. But like, this kid has been so patient, and UConn fans have been waiting for this, knowing that it was there. And I give that kid so much credit for just sticking true, like sticking with the plan, right? Like, it would have been easy a year ago, 2 years ago, just transfer out. It's not your time. It's not going to happen. Now, I would argue he's one of the 2 or 3 most important players on this team. By the way, I haven't even mentioned it yet. Silas Demery coming back. Credit to him. Hurt that ankle in the Big East tournament. He came off the bench, gave them 21 minutes of play. The stats were not amazing, but 2 points, 4 assists, 2 steals. I mean, that is the kind of stuff that if you want to win championships, like, maybe him playing, it doesn't show up on the stat sheet. I do think it changed some sort of psyche with this team of like, oh my goodness, Silas is out there. Well, we got to go. We got to whatever. Eric Ryba gives him good minutes off the bench. And so, listen, we don't have to spend a ton of time on the second game of the tournament for UConn, but this is the game that UConn has been waiting for. Every single person stepping up. And now it completely, in my opinion, changes the trajectory of this UConn team. Now, I've said that a few times over the last few months, but I don't think this, I don't know. UConn fans, if you're in the chat at 12:26 Eastern time, if you can't sleep, that's great. If you're watching this on Monday, late Monday, whatever, this feels different to me. It feels different to me, and I know they followed up the St. John's game, the win a few weeks ago, with a bad loss, and I know that, whatever. This one does feel different because it was back against the wall. A lot of people are picking UCLA. A lot of people don't think you're going to win. Is Silas Demery going to be able to play? And you just came through when you absolutely, positively needed it the most. And now you look at the draw. Look at the draw. They get a Michigan State team that they played in an exhibition, but they did beat. Michigan State is good. They're physical, but they're not unbeatable. And then Duke versus St. John's. Whoever you get there, I actually like the matchup with Duke. And with St. John's, you did beat them once, even though they beat you pretty bad a few weeks ago. So we will see what happens. I've talked enough UConn, but goodness gracious, does that win feel good? And goodness gracious, am I excited to see what this team is capable of next weekend, Friday night in D.C. against Michigan State. All right, so what we're going to do, we're going to take one more break. Matt, I think we only have the Collie Puffs. That's fine. You can run it a second time. When we come back, we're going to talk the Kentucky Wildcats. Season is officially over. It was a train wreck. How does Mark Pope get the train back on the tracks? We'll talk about that. We'll talk about Darius Acuff on Saturday night. Quick break. Be right back. All right, we're going to get back to the show in a minute. But before we do, you know what we got to do. We got to thank our friends. We got to thank our partners. We got to go ahead and thank Collie Puffs and ColliePuffs.com. Yeah, you see the logo on the back of the screen right here. Okay, so I've told you all about Collie Puffs, but family-owned company, not far from where I live. Joey, a huge sports fan. And one day he was sitting on the couch and he said, you know what? I need a snack that is both healthy but delicious, something my kids are going to love, something my family's going to love, something I'm going to love. And so he came up with Collie Puffs. This is the new age health food snack. You don't need to go to the grocery aisle and buy all that crap, the Doritos, the Fritos. No, my friends, you need Collie Puffs. Baked, not fried, avocado oil, no grease, healthy ingredients. But here's the best part. They taste freaking delicious. Actually, there's another best part. In addition to tasting delicious, in addition to being healthy, they are also taking care of listeners of the Aaron Torres pod. Okay, so check this out. All you got to do is go to ColliePuffs.com. That's CAULIPUFFS.com, ColliePuffs.com, and you can get 15% off any purchase with the promo code Torres. That's Torres, Torres. It's that simple. 15% off any purchase, 1 bag to try them out, 100 bags to cater a party. Doesn't really matter. Promo code Torres. ColliePuffs.com gets you 15% off. Collie Puffs also available on Amazon. You obviously can't get the promo code there, but ColliePuffs.com, ColliePuffs.com, promo code Torres gets you 15% off any purchase. Thank you to our friends at Collie Puffs. All right, everybody. I am back. Good to be back. Good to be back. We're going to get some comments in a second, but I'll tell you this. The text threads are humming right now. First of all, want to give credit to my buddy Ryan Fowler, Tide 100.9 radio host. I peer pressured him into our Survivor pool. Shout out Ryan Fowler. He claims he doesn't follow college basketball. He is on to the weekend in the Survivor pool. I hope everybody who is in Survivor is having a ton of fun. I very much appreciate everybody who signed up. We also have my buddy, I won't name him by name, my lawyer. I've said many times, I have a lawyer, not for anything bad, just helps me with contracts. Don't worry, Torres isn't, pulling a whatever, but he's a Gators fan. He said, Golden stink bomb tonight, woof. So we got that from the Gators fan. And then I want to give a shout out to my girl, Mary Mack, Fox Sports Radio, a UConn or a Michigan State fan. She says, we got to get some stakes going for Michigan State UConn next week. So shout out Mary Mack, our board op at Fox Sports Radio. So the text thread is humming. Want to get to a couple cool things. Matt, I want to pull the first thing. Agent K says, roll Tide. Listen, Alabama fans think I hate their team. I think Nate Oates has done an unbelievable job. Now, I will tell you, I think in our bracket on Tuesday or Wednesday when we picked the bracket, I did take Texas Tech. I looked into this game, and I was like, I actually think this is a great matchup for Alabama. Nate Oates is a heck of a coach. What is this? The fourth time he's been to the second weekend of the NCAA tournament. I think they get Michigan next. So you talk about an entertaining game, but credit to the Alabama Crimson Tide. Matt, one or two questions. Obviously, we'll prioritize Super Chats, and then we will get to the rest of it. Wild West says, AT, I got UConn versus Arkansas for the title. It can happen. Well, I'll tell you what, there's a lot of steps to get there. We're going to talk about Arkansas High Point in just a minute. It's still alive, though. That's the Torres Bowl. I mean, you talk about, what Indianapolis would be like if we got Arkansas versus UConn. That would be wild. I will say Arizona versus UConn would also be wild as well. Speaking of Arkansas and speaking of Arizona, both Curtis Wilkerson from Inside Arkansas and Michael Luke from Arizona AZ12 podcast both want to come on the show this week. So you'll get plenty of coverage of that game if you're a hog that's or a Wildcat that's listening to the show. But Wild West says, I've got UConn versus Arkansas for the title. By the way, we are approaching 12:30 Eastern time, 217 people in the chat. Love you guys. Thank you guys. Matt, let's get to one or two more questions before we talk some other stuff. Kentucky Yelovich, karma for Golden for being a you-know-what and running up the score on Prairie View. We actually had that conversation on Fox Sports Radio on Saturday night of like, at some point, did you have to do Prairie View dirty like that? I'll say this. I've had limited interactions with Todd Golden. I find him to be actually a cool guy. Fun fact, we basically have the exact same birthday. He's July 7th. I'm July 6th. No big deal, whatever. But weird couple weeks for him. Kind of took some, I thought, unnecessary shots at Mark Pope in Kentucky. The Prairie View embarrassment. What was it, about a 70-point win? But like I said, I think that's a game that is going to live with him for quite some time. Another question or two, we'll get out of here. Wild West says, I knew Florida's backcourt would get them popped. Didn't think it would be this soon, though. Yeah, listen. There's some interesting conversations about Florida because the front court won't be as good next year. I don't think they'll bring any of those guys back potentially. And I think then you have to decide, is the backcourt that you have good enough? Are you running it back with the guys that you have, or are you going to potentially go ahead and do it with some other guys? So it'll be an interesting couple months for Florida. By the way, for people who are just joining the chat, thank you for joining us. We've already talked to UConn. We've already talked Florida. We've already talked a lot of these teams, so make sure to go back and listen. This will be available via podcast, all that good stuff. Matt, maybe one more comment, then we'll get to UConn. Oh, shout out to 2VZ, who says my birthday is also July 6th. What a dub. I agree. So we've got Torres, 2VWZ, 50 Cent, Zion Williamson. What an eclectic crew. The four of us. We should get dinner on July 6th next year. It'll be fun. We'll have a good time. Happy early birthday or late birthday to you. We'll see, whenever. But July 6th is my birthday. Todd Golden is July 7th. He probably won't be celebrating quite in the same way that he did last year. Let's go ahead. Let's do it. Yes, Luke. So I saw this in the chat. So somebody asked earlier, is this the first time Pitino will be facing Duke in the NCAA tournament since the famous you-know-what in 92? And I said, I swore I remembered him playing Louisville against Duke. And remember, Louisville was in the Big East for most of his time there. So they weren't ACC teams that would be matched up. Somebody else brought it up in the chat. Unfortunately, that was the famous Kevin Ware game. If you're not familiar, Google it, but do it with the filters on of the pictures because there's a pretty nasty injury. But that was the famous Kevin Ware game, 2013. Rick Pitino and Louisville went on to beat Duke to eventually win a national title that we can't call a national title, but we all know it was a national title. Shout out the NCAA. Give Louisville the banner back. Anything else, Matt, before we get to the final few segments of the show? We have just a great audience here. All right. Dan Rivera is our Survivor superstar. He says we're down to 129 people. So we started with 199. So it's actually not as much. It's not as much carnage as you would think because for the most part, Thursday, Friday, Saturday went to plan. As a matter of fact, I believe Friday we had 0 people lose Survivor because of bad picks. Now, a couple people didn't put picks in and were eliminated, but today was the day of carnage. 13 people had Florida. 11 people had Texas Tech. We're down to 129 people in Survivor, down from 199. To everybody who signed up, we appreciate your support. All right, let's go ahead and switch gears. Let's do it. Let's have the conversation. It is now 12:36 Eastern time. Let's talk about the second game on the docket. It was Kentucky versus Iowa State. Okay, so Kentucky versus Iowa State. Kentucky coming off the very emotional win on Friday. We didn't get a chance to talk about it. We haven't done a show since. Otega away. We know what happened. All that good stuff. Okay. Credible win. Kentucky deserved all the flowers for finding a way against a good Santa Clara team. I don't want to hear about, timeout this, but no, they deserved it. And it was crazy because coming out of Friday, you could see the pathway all of a sudden open up. Iowa State, Joshua Jefferson, I believe their best player, goes down early against Tennessee Tech. And you sat there and said, the old Angels in the outfield, or was it Angels in the outfield? No, it was Dumb and Dumber. Angels in the outfield was something else. Dumb and Dumber was, you're saying there's a chance. And I was saying there's a chance coming into the day. Now, I didn't pick Kentucky necessarily to win this game, but I just bring it up because it felt like there was a chance. And for half a second, it looked like it. Kentucky jumped out to an 18-6 lead. Kentucky was in control. But then, unfortunately, all hell broke loose, right? Kentucky was very good early. 18-6, they were up at one point. Iowa State starts chipping away. By the end of the first half, Iowa State, takes the lead right before halftime. And then, unfortunately, in a very Kentucky-ish type ending, gave up 51 points to Iowa State in the second half, and it turned into a blowout. So this was essentially a metaphor for every game this Kentucky season. There were moments that gave you hope, that made you believe that maybe things would be different, and then they just went exactly the way that they have gone basically all season long. I thought it was especially interesting after the game. I would give credit. I don't even know who was interviewing Nate Heisey, but he's one of the players on Iowa State. And he basically acknowledged, we knew that if we punched Kentucky in the mouth, they would quit. Matt, I think we got this sound on in time. If we did, go ahead and play it right away.
And I think that that's something that we kind of identified before the game, even of the potential for them to do that. And the way that we just turned them over and played our defense to where it didn't look like they could do anything else. I think when you get them to that point, it's like, let's just be done. I think that's their mindset. So it was good to get them to that point.
Let's just be done. That's their mindset. So that's Kentucky basketball in 2026. Final game of the season. They essentially quit when they got punched in the mouth against a veteran, experienced Iowa State team. I did put out a tweet during the game, which I did not send to Matt, but Iowa State, it is a group of guys that is recruited to a system, developed within the system, and you could just see the pieces fit, the players fit, the skill sets fit. Everybody is rowing in the same direction, even without their best player. Kentucky is the exact opposite. It was a group that was thrown together. It never really fit. And now it is time to talk about an offseason at Kentucky. Because at the end of the day, and by the way, as other teams lose, we'll kind of do this stuff. But with Kentucky, I will say this. I don't think it's some big, bold take. It's not. And I think I'm not even the first person to say it. But I do think that the next 2 months are going to define how long Mark Pope is the head coach at Kentucky. He has to put together the right roster with the right pieces. He's got to figure out what he wants to do and who he wants to be, who he wants to retain, who he wants to let go, because ultimately it's put up or shut up time. Now, I even want to backtrack for half a second. I know mostly Kentucky fans will be watching this. Mark Pope, unless something absurd happens, Mark Pope is not going to be out after this year. One, I'll just say this. I've said it a couple times. I think by Monday afternoon, North Carolina will officially be looking for a head coach. I don't think you want to be even looking for a head coach, with North Carolina in the mix at the same time. But beyond that, listen, Mark Pope made the Sweet 16 last year. You don't have an AD at this moment. They are not going to let Mark Pope go, not even a conversation. But I do think the next 2 months will define Mark Pope's tenure. You cannot lose 14 games again next year. You cannot finish 9-9 in the SEC and play on Wednesday in the SEC tournament next year. I respect Kentucky fans. I appreciate Kentucky fans. And I know Kentucky fans well enough to know that is not the standard. That is not acceptable. There will be no year 4 if you have 14 losses to end next season. And by the way, it's not just me that knows that. Mark Pope knows that as well. And now it's on him to get to work. First of all, I think the interesting part of this conversation is that basically, it's a weird thing of, in the NIL era, I'm not afraid to ask this question. Who are you bringing back and who are you not, right? Because listen, when a team has success, one, you're going to lose guys to the NBA or to graduation or whatever. But for the most part, everyone is essentially going to return as is, right? Like, I don't think UConn is going to have 7, 8, 9 guys potentially leave. I don't think Arizona will, but some of them are going to go to the NBA. I don't think they're going to have a bunch of guys leave. At Kentucky, I think there are some really tough decisions to make on who you want back, and respectfully, who you have to tell you're not really welcome back. And listen, it's the world we live in. If we're going to pay these players big money, guess what? There are big responsibilities and big expectations, and some of them just shouldn't be welcome back, and I don't think will be welcome back. And by the way, I should do the caveat. I know I'm all over the place. I know there were injuries at Kentucky, okay? I am here to tell you, one, Jaden Quayens, who knows what you were ever going to get out of him, even if things were going well. Jalen Lowe, I understand he was kind of out, in and out of the lineup early. I don't think Jalen Lowe was the difference between 22-14 and 30-8 or whatever, 30-6, right? He just wasn't. And so now these tough questions have to be asked of, who do you want? What do you want to be? And so to me, these are fascinating questions for Kentucky going into the summer, going into the spring. Who do you even want to bring back? Who are you going to ask to bring back? Who are you going to say you can come back, but it's got to be at a price that makes more sense? And then, of course, I think, how much money is Mark Pope even going to have to work with after this past season? So these are questions that have to be asked. I will leave it up to Kentucky fans to decide who they want back and who they don't. Obviously, Otega Owe graduates. Obviously, Denzel Aberdeen will not be back. And obviously, Jaden Quayens is going to go pro. Let me make sure. I don't think I'm missing anybody. I think everybody else, in theory, could come back. I will tell you, the guys that I would personally want back and would prioritize right now, I would prioritize Cam Williams. I thought he played well when he came back from injury. He played well on Sunday, hit a couple big three-pointers, and that's the kind of guy that you need. Shot 36% from three this year. I know he only averaged 6 points per game. Shot the crap out of the ball. I would bring him back. Colin Chandler, I know there's some stuff about how good is he really, and Colin Chandler should not be your second or third option. So you bring him back, you ask, you tell him what the role is going to be. You whatever. I'm not going to get into roles at 1 a.m. Eastern on a Sunday here, but what is the role going to be? What are you going to play? What are you going to do? But I still think he adds value as a shooter, as a scorer, as a secondary ball handler. You don't want him to be a point guard, but I think he comes back. The other guy, too, and I know he became a little bit of a pseudo-controversial figure at Kentucky over the last couple of weeks because he did not play great. I would want Malachi Moreno back. And I know that, again, he was not great late. My counter to that is he's 7'1", or 6'11", 7 feet, whatever. I don't know what he's officially listed at. But He is big. He is athletic. He is skilled. And I will take a second year over him, over rolling the dice on guys in the portal, especially because we all know that big men, you got to spend the most money to get those kinds of big men, right? We saw the Yaxel Lendenborg story last week. We know that it's a lot of money to get a difference-making big man. So to me, that is priority number one. Those three I would bring back. As far as everybody else, I am not, let me put it this way. I'm not trying to disrespect anybody, okay? Jasper Johnson, it didn't work the way that I think anybody thought. I don't wish him ill will. I don't think he's going to come back. I don't think he even wants to come back. And I think it's probably best for everybody if he just moves on. I think he has value. I think there are systems that make sense for him. I don't know that Kentucky next year is a feasible one. Mo Diabate is an interesting one. I know he's polarizing. Some people love him. Some people don't. I understand why he was brought in. And by the way, I should mention too, and I know we're going all over the place here, I understand why Mark Pope put together this roster that he did. Last year, he won a lot of games, but there were games where they just did not have enough athleticism. They weren't tough, they weren't tough enough in the paint. And so Mark Pope really prioritized athleticism and put aside shooting and playmaking and the things that he really prioritized a year ago. I don't know that I would bring back Mo Diabate, though. I mean, 6'6", 6'7", whatever he is, he's a little bit undersized for the SEC. And there's a reason that Nate Oates, I know Nate Oates wanted to keep him, but it wasn't a priority. Brandon Garrison, I'll be honest, I understand he provides energy and toughness and this and that. A little too inconsistent for me, especially at the price that he'll probably demand. I'd probably let him go. And so, Jalen Lowe, by the way, I'm just going to say it. I said it a minute ago. Good player. Sure, he's a great kid, great family, all that. He's not the difference between 22-14 and 30-6. I think there are better players out there. And so I would let them go. And this is what I would prioritize. And I might have missed a guy. I actually like Yelovich. I know he's a little bit on defense. He's whatever. That 6'10" guy that can shoot is very valuable. I would try to bring him back as well. Those are the four that I would bring back. Cam Williams, Colin Chandler, Yelovich, and Malachi Moreno. In the portal, this would be my focus. You need that dog point guard, okay? Whoever the Lamont Butler is of this year's portal, and we don't know, and I'm not going to start speculating. I'm going to get 100 names from Kentucky fans over the next couple weeks. When the portal opens and when guys are in the portal, we will talk about them. But to me, the number one priority, find a point guard who is tough, who makes plays, who gets others involved, and then just surround him with a whole bunch of three-point shooting. And again, I'm not going to project on who will be in the portal and what names to look out after. Now, it is worth noting, obviously, as the seasons end, guys will at least announce that they plan on entering the portal. Remember, the portal this year does not open until after the national championship game. So it's still another 2 weeks before the portal opens. And that is Mark Pope's job from this point forward. One, you do need to hire a GM. You need somebody who knows the back channels of everything that's going on. But two, every coach needs to be hitting up every agent, every person, every single person that has access to any players. Who's going to be in the portal? What's the cost going to be? You got 2 weeks to figure this all out now, to get your stuff in order, to get ready. And so to me, that is the only thing that matters. That is the only priority. And if I was advising Mark Pope, and he's not asking for my advice, I would tell him straightforward, spend whatever you have on a point guard, surround him with a bunch of shooting, keep Malachi Moreno, and then from there, let the chips fall where they may. Listen, last year, this is why it's hard for me, and I think most people, especially if you're listening to this, I've been up and down on Mark Pope, but his teams have been up and down. I'm still not ready to give up on him because I did see him beat John Shire, because I did see him beat Todd Golden, because I did see him beat Mark Few when he had a roster full of guys that fit what he wanted to do, mature kids, on and off the court, shoot a bunch of threes, whatever. And so you have to get back to that. And if there's a ceiling to what you can do, if it's not number 9 next year, then that's the case. That's what it is. There's nothing you can do about that. But what you can't do is bring in a bunch of guys that don't fit what you want to do, try to fit the puzzle, and the puzzle pieces never fit. And so again, We're going to break down all these guys that are going to either enter the portal or international players. I know there's already buzz about the British point guard that Kentucky and Duke and Louisville and everybody's going after. Spend the money on the point guard, get three-point shooting, and get guys that fit the system that you want to run. Ultimately, if it doesn't work out, go down doing what you're comfortable with and go down doing, to a degree that we've seen, what you're good at. Spacing, 3 points, this, whatever. And oh, by the way, you're supposed to be this big analytics guy. Figure it out, because whatever you did last offseason did not work. I think it all stems from being unprepared, going into the portal without really having a plan, getting into these recruitments, being surprised by what numbers were being asked for and what other people were offering. You got to be ready this year. You got to be ready. You got to go get a point guard. And then from there, you got to surround them with the right pieces. And like I said, if you're not as athletic as Alabama or Arkansas or whoever, you just got to take it how it is. That's just the way it's going to be. But you cannot have a season like this. Like I said, make sure you're locked in, because we will have plenty of coverage of Kentucky's offseason, every step, every piece, in the coming weeks. Last thing that I want to talk about, and to the 239 of you that are here at, what is that, 12:50 Eastern time? You're crazy. You people are crazy. I love you. I appreciate you. We will get to questions to wrap the show. Let's go ahead and talk really quickly about Saturday, okay? And I have a couple thoughts after this, but let's talk about what ended up being the best game of Saturday. How about those Arkansas Razorbacks against High Point University, okay? So this was the last game, and of course it was going to be the last game, because John Calipari said after the opening win against Hawaii, we play well in the afternoons. So of course the NCAA gave Arkansas the last game of the night. We got, you can't say it was better than Vandy versus Nebraska, but it was pretty darn close as Arkansas wins 94-88. Darius Acuff does it again. We'll talk about him in a minute, but let's talk about this game, okay? And so first of all, I don't remember how much we previewed this game, but I will say this. I went on Arkansas radio on Friday with Phil Elson and Matt Jones, two legends. Love Phil. He's the voice of college baseball in Arkansas. Matt Jones, the former receiver and basketball player for Arkansas. And what I said to him was, I said, guys, put aside the seeding. I said, this is going to be a tough matchup for Arkansas because, one, as we remember, Nick Pringle was out of this game. Also, Carter Knox has obviously been out for a while. Arkansas was down to 6 players. And so you're playing a team that plays super fast, that shoots a ton of threes, that scores 90 points a game, and you only have 6 players, right? And so to me, it was a very talented team that you're playing in High Point. It was also, on top of it, not only a very talented team, a style, let's be honest, Arkansas, maybe not the greatest defensive team in the history of the sport. I think we can acknowledge it. And the other thing that I kept coming back to was, usually when a high major team is playing a mid-major, they're able to wear down the mid-major by the end of the night. You're not going to be able to do that against High Point because you don't have enough players. You only have 6 players. So it's not like you're throwing 9, 10 huge bodies at them and eventually you're going to wear them down. You only have 6 players. And I really thought that Arkansas could potentially lose this game. And for a while, it looked like they were going to. And then Darius Acuff happened. Okay, and listen, I'm going to say the most hyperbolic thing about Darius Acuff that I can. There is nothing to say about this guy that we have not already said. I told you in January he was going to be a first-team All-American. He was. I told you by the end of January I would be shocked if he didn't win SEC Player of the Year. He did. And how many times over the course of the season has he come through when his team needed him the most? Listen, I don't have all the stats in front of me from Saturday night, but I do know that he went on a personal 7-0 run at a moment when Arkansas needed him the most. He finished with 36 points in this game, 6 assists in this game. And I think I saw a stat, he's only the second player in whatever to be averaging 30 points and 6 assists through 2 tournament games. There's one other guy, and it's some crazy name like John Stockton or something. It's not John Stockton, but it's like Russell Westbrook or something. I think he's only the second player to average 30 and 6 through 2 tournament games in forever, okay? So the hyperbole, you cannot, there's just not enough to say about this guy to not appreciate everything that he's doing. And I thought what was cool about this game was late in the game, so many other guys stepped up, most notably Malik Thomas. Okay, Malik Thomas was not great all game, but that late three-pointer really sealed the deal. 19 points, three three-pointers made, and he was phenomenal. Malik Ewan, again, in the absence of Nick Pringle, we played. John Calipari, well, we actually didn't play, but John Calipari was raving about Nick Pringle, or about Malik Ewan after the game. It was that Hogs Plus website. They shared a clip of Cal basically being like, we needed you. You came through, blah, 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 this and that. And he came through. And so I bring it up because another incredible performance. And you know who else had a great performance? Coach Cal on the podium after the game. Here is him talking about his phenomenal group of Razorbacks. Play the sound.
I want you to look at these two closely, okay? They have otherworldly confidence. Both of them. They could run for president and believe I could run this country, because that's how they think. I like that they're starting to talk in huddles about let's do this, let's do that. They're being empowered. I'm trying to get Malik Thomas to catch and shoot it. Quit bouncing it and sidestepping, just shoot. So the last one, he just caught and shot. I mean, he's one of the best scorers in the country. He scores different ways, just like him. And you know what's great? They're playing off of one another. And all they've done is helped each other. People are like, how are you going to get these two to play together? They're both good, young people with good hearts, and they care about each other. And so now if he has it going, he's the one passing it to him. Keep shooting. If I get on him, he's telling him, just keep playing. If I get on him, he's telling him, just keep playing. Sometimes they're saying, don't even listen to him.
So I love everything about it, and this very much plays to the conversation we had after the game against Hawaii on Thursday night. Okay, so listen, first of all, the challenge ahead against Arizona is going to be unbelievable. Arizona, Michigan, Arizona's in the short conversation of best teams in college basketball, and they are specifically a tough matchup for Arkansas. I'm not going to lie. They're great in the front court. Krivas is legitimately like 7'2", 7'3", grabs everything. Koa Pete's a monster. You know, Cal recruited him at Arkansas. Obviously didn't get him. They're a really good team, Arizona, okay? And so we got plenty of time to preview that, and we will see what happens. And I'm not going to undersell the reality that I don't know if we have point spreads yet via BetUS, but I am guessing that when it does come out, if we get one, that Arizona will be a comfortable favorite Thursday night in San Jose. By the way, we do have a point spread, Arizona, an 8.5-point favorite. So I bring it up because it is going to be a challenge. It is an especially tough challenge for them. But this team has been handling challenges all season long. I mean, think about it. Just think about the NCAA tournament. Just think about the last 10 days. They play 3 games in 3 days in Nashville. By the way, let's go back to the game before. They're playing at Missouri without Darius Acuff. They find a way to win. The game before on Senior Day, the Nolan Richardson statue. Let's not forget, they destroyed a Texas team that is now in the Sweet 16. They go to Nashville, 3 games in 3 days. They got to get on a plane on Tuesday after playing 3 games in 3 days and probably not getting back to Fayetteville until late on Sunday night. They then have to fly out. They play about a 1 o'clock local time tip-off, and then they have the last game on Sunday. I didn't even realize this. They didn't go back to the Central Time Zone. I thought after the game on Saturday, they'd take the charter back and at least get home for about 36 hours before having to get back on a plane. Instead, the NCAA basically told them, we're short on planes. We got this TSA thing going on. You got to go straight to San Jose. So they are back on the road, but they answer every challenge. And to go back to the Coach Cal press conference, are you betting against Darius Acuff? Are you betting against Malik Thomas? And that is the thing that keeps standing out to me. These two, and it's the whole team. I don't want to dismiss Billy Richmond, who's unbelievable, Malik Ewan, who's been awesome. This team steps up to every single challenge. And to the point that Cal made, These two specifically, this is Acuff and Malik Thomas I'm talking about, they keep getting more confident. They listen, I don't think we've seen the best of Darius Acuff yet. That sounds crazy. He was not great in the first half on Saturday against High Point. I don't know that we have seen the best of him. I don't know that we've seen the best of Malik Thomas. They're getting better, and as Cal said, they're getting more confident. And so we will see what happens. They are going to have a challenge ahead, but when you have Darius Acuff and you have Malik Thomas, you got yourself a freaking shot. We will see what happens. I am so intrigued by this Arizona game, and I still think Arizona's maybe the best team in college basketball. But when you have those two, they're getting better every single game, every single week. I don't know how you can doubt this team going into the Sweet 16. All right, let's get to a couple questions, and let's get the heck out of here because it is late. I saw something I want to get to. Matt, give me a sec. Okay, let me see if I can find it really quick. A lot of banter in here. Oh, the Nate Oates buyout. Dan was asking about the Nate Oates buyout. Matt, let's see if we can find this. One of us can find it. Because I thought this was a very interesting thing. Where was it? Darn it. Here it is. This is from Dan. Dan is all over our survivor pool and the coaching search. This, to me, pay close attention. And I know this because I just talked about it with North Carolina yesterday. Nate Oates' contract, the buyout is fascinating. If Nate Oates wanted to leave Alabama today, the buyout is $18 million. He ain't leaving. But guess what? April 1st of 2026, so 9 days from now, 10 days from now, technically, his buyout drops to $10 million. That is still a crap ton of money, but Dan brings up the fact that it drops to $4 million in April of 2027. And so, one, I think North Carolina should go hire him. I'll be honest, I don't know if North Carolina has the buyout money to pay $10 million to Nate Oates plus another $6-7 million to him as a head coach, plus give him a staff that he wants, plus on top of all that, also pay Hubert Davis's buyout. That's who I would get if I was Nate Oates, or if I was UNC, but I don't think they're going to have what they need. The counter to that is that, as Dan says, Nate Oates' buyout drops to $4 million April 1st of 2027. Kentucky fans, I mean, I don't think anybody's rooting against Mark Pope in year 3, but Nate Oates is gettable. Nate Oates is gettable next year. We'll see what happens. Mark Pope is going to survive. One or two more questions because it is so late and I got to be up early. All right. Bud Wyatt says High Point may have been underseeded. Yeah, High Point was underseeded. Listen, this is just a quick conversation. We talked about High Point on Thursday's show. I am so happy that our guy Flynn Clayman just called out the nonsense of the net. And if you missed all of his stuff on Thursday, he basically said, look, we've been a great team all year, just nobody would schedule us. The net is preposterous. We're not going to do a net rant at 1:02 Eastern time, but they were underseeded. You mean to tell me that's not a top 40 team in college basketball? You mean to tell me that shouldn't have been like a 10 seed, a 9 seed? They went 30-4 going into the NCAA tournament. I'm sorry, they should have been. But yes, they were misseeded. Darius should be a top 3 pick. Arizona will be a tough task on Thursday. Shout out to Bud Wyatt. His Final Four of Arkansas, Houston, Michigan, and Duke is still intact. I will readily acknowledge my Final Four of Arizona, St. John's, Iowa State, and Florida is not intact. Florida is out. And I would also add Iowa State. With the way Michigan is playing right now, I don't think Iowa State's beating them. One or two more. Incredible chat here at this hour. KY Yelovich, thank you. I can't wait to see the comments when I actually post that clip because I don't think everyone is going to feel the same way. KY Yelovich, we talked about Kentucky and what is next this offseason. KY Yelovich says, Torres, that is the fairest assessment of Pope I've heard. Awesome. Exactly how I feel. Just couldn't find the words. That's my job. That's what we do on this show, baby. Matt, if you can clip this off with the other clip, I don't want to give you too much surgery to do at super late at night. But if we can get that clipped off, I think that would be a good bow to put on the Kentucky segment. One or two more questions and we will get out of here. I appreciate everybody. I'm so excited that we have this crowd. We're actually, you know what we're going to do? We're going to do a members only mailbag tomorrow. If you are not a member, you're always encouraged to sign up. No pressure. $4.99 a month. Helps us when we go on the road. Final Four. We're going to be on the road for like 8 days. Just click the join button. But we were doing members only mailbags every week, and then the tournament got crazy. We were traveling to Nashville, all that stuff. We will do a members only mailbag next week, so you can drop your questions. But also, if you want to support the show, click the join button. It's $4.99 a month. We get at minimum an exclusive members only mailbag every week. And by the way, I will say, anybody signs up tonight, you will get a free box of Collie Puffs via our partner at Collie Puffs. Sign up to be a member, but we will do a members only mailbag on Monday, and we're going to have wall-to-wall coverage all week. Thursday night, we'll be back as well. Maybe one or two more questions or comments. I am so done. Kentucky Outdoors Live. I don't know what your schedule is, bro, but when we go in the morning, you're here. When we go at night, you're here. Thank you for your support, my man. We cannot thank you enough. Kentucky Outdoors Life, I believe, shared with the chat a few weeks ago. He has 7 kids, so I don't know how you're finding time for all this, man. Kentucky Outdoors Life was going to join us a few weeks ago at the Mint at Mint Kentucky Downs. We had a great time there. By the way, if you missed it, we did a behind-the-scenes video. Matt did an unbelievable job with it, editing it and all that stuff. Make sure to check it out as well. All right, I'll tell you what, hour and a half here. I think it's time to get out of here. Unbelievable night. By the way, submit your questions. We're going to get to all of them, and we have so much basketball to get to. Portal season is actually my favorite time of year, and I continue to say it. This is not the show that when the season ends, we just take the month off. When the season ends, that's when our work begins, and we're going wall to wall with the portal. By the way, I talked to somebody pretty high up. I said, are you hearing any interesting names for the portal this year? He goes, yeah, everybody. I think the portal is going to be as crazy as it's ever been. We're going to cover it all, and it is going to be fascinating. Time to go. It is 1:06 Eastern time. You guys are incredible. Shout out to Torrent Craig. Shout out to Rachel, who hates my voice. Shout out to JJ Reddick, you F-head. Unblock me, bro. Thank you, everybody, for listening. Got plenty of content coming these next 3, 4, 5 days.